like to start by telling you a little bit about the kind of journalism I do and accordingly the kind of journalism that I want to talk to you about today. As you can probably tell from the little bio Janine just ran off, I have my fingers in quite a few pies. My primary job is I edit the homepage of 9MSN. I sit on the board of the youth media organisation 5Wire, through which I met Janine and quite a few other people along here tonight. And I'm also doing a PhD. But what I wanted to talk to you tonight was about the writing part of my work and the ways that I use the internet to develop ideas and connect with others who are interested in the things that I write about. I should clarify that I'm not a traditional reporter or a news journalist. What I could do could probably be best described as social analysis or wanking, depending on how you want to look at it. And I get that I mean, well, social analysis, not wanker. I attempt to draw out the nuances of subjects that interest me in the form of essays, speeches, opinion pieces and blogs, with the aim of getting people to think about things in a new light. In terms of innovation, I'm interested in looking at how the internet is changing this process and how it will continue to change in the future. Probably everybody here has heard a lot about how the internet is making media more open and democratic, and I think this is true in lots of ways. These days it's easy for anyone with the drive, inclination, and importantly an internet connection, which not everybody has, to set up what is effectively their own publication, broadcasting the information and opinions that matter to them. Similarly, it's a lot easier for people who don't otherwise have a voice in the mainstream media, which is of course the majority of people, to talk back to media producers through newspaper forums, directly emailing journalists and so on. But despite this, what I find really interesting is the extent to which the two worlds, the mass media mastheads of the newspapers, magazines and broadcasters, and the smaller operations run by independent bloggers, the extent to which they remain divided. Whether it's because they don't know how, don't think it's worth it, are too tired after they come home from work, or they just enjoy the authority that their masthead affords them, most paid journalists aren't engaging seriously with social media. Which is strange to me when I think about it, because it's a passion for media and a passion for getting ideas out there that is the reason that a lot of journalists get into their trade in the first place. Similarly, very few bloggers, particularly in Australia, have been able to access the mainstream media market. So they're still pretty divided. As someone who does both, but who identifies more as a mainstream media journalist, because that's the area in which I've been more successful, I find this really problematic. If you do the kind of writing that I do, if your aim is to start conversations and spread ideas, surely it makes more sense to get those ideas out to as many people as possible. And while it's true that forums like the Sydney Morning Herald or Nova or Clio or Q&A provide the biggest microphones from which to do so, the smaller microphones can be equally effective in stirring debate. They may reach a smaller number of people, but the people they reach are more likely to be really engaged with what you're talking about. And as audiences, particularly those engaged and informed ones, move further along what Chris Anderson calls the long tail of content, media providers need to move along with them to remain relevant. So how do we do this, and where does the future lie for social analysts or wankers like me? One of the most important things, I think, is to be genuinely multi-platform. Mass media brands will still play a role. They're the loudest microphones. They pay wages better than most blogs can, which is personally important to me. And I think most importantly, they provide the space and the economic resources for people to produce really smart, considered writing. I guess what you could consider to be the publishing equivalent of the slow food movement. Online media, on the other hand, works better for quick responses, the daily stuff. It kind of works as a direct line to your audience or community and a space to hash out and develop ideas. I don't think we're quite at this point yet, but I also don't think that what we currently have is the perceived credibility gap between new and old media will last for much longer, which kind of distinguishes proper professional writers by their mass media bylines and dismisses everyone else as an amateur. Sure, it requires talent to regularly grab the megaphone of the mass media, but it also requires talent to make yourself heard above the din of the free-for-all for the blogosphere. Being genuinely cross-platform means no one medium is more important or significant than another. When I was thinking about people who were doing this well last night, when I was preparing for now, interestingly, someone who I thought was doing it well is the very, very mainstream media person, Mia Friedman, who used to edit Cosmopolitan. I find it really interesting how she's leveraged her mass media career at Cosmopolitan and as a columnist at the Sun Herald and as someone who appears regularly on television to build an audience for her independently operated blog, and at the same time she's used her blog and her engagement with her audience there to make her columns more relevant. She's also very good at the other skills that I think journalists are going to have to improve at, which is connecting with your audience. Last year I wrote in the Walk Me magazine about my belief that audiences increasingly want to feel as if they know in some way the people that they're reading. In no small part, I think, because of the interactive nature of new media, which means that we do feel as though we know a lot of the people that we read. What this increasingly means, I suspect, is that rather than the writers with the high status being aloof stars who broadcast to an audience that they don't listen to in return, the most influential communicators will be the ones for whom communication is a genuinely two-way street, who listen to and respond to their readers in return, like Andrew Sullivan at The Atlantic Monthly. The third and final shift, which is related to the previous two, is that we need to conceive thought and ideas leadership in a different way, in a way that is as much about being one of the most active and accordingly valuable participants in the conversation as it is about grabbing everybody else's attention. That's all I have to say now, but if anybody has any questions or discussion topics they want to raise, that would be great.